Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay, so welcome back. As is our custom, we go around and introduce ourselves, say our name. My name is Cass.
My name is Henry.
I'm George.
I'm Jen.
My name is Stephen.
Kevin.
And Jack.
And George Kenneth.
And online, we have Tom, Robert, Christian, Bob, Francis, Richard, Tom Hart, Dave, Matthew, Jeff, Daniel, Mike, Tom Cantwell, Joe, Michael Altschuler, Will and Frisco Wolf, Harley, and another Richard. So welcome, everyone. One of the blessings of the of the pandemic was that we got to take our meetings online, and because of that, we were introduced to Zerdan and Phunrab, who is our speaker today, who and other people who join us from a distance. So Jetsun Zerdan Kelsang Phunrab is an American Kadampa Buddhist monk. Zerdan has been ordained for 17 years and a practicing Buddhist for more than 22 years. He was ordained in Ulverston, England, by a Gelugpa monk, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso Rinpoche. He began his ordained life by helping to create a Buddhist temple by teaching meditation and Buddhadharma in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. Zerdan now lives a humble life in Eugene, Oregon, keeping his vows, maintaining a vegan and minimalist lifestyle, and sharing a warm, gentle heart and joyful attitude. Apologies for massacring any pronunciation, and welcome, Zerdan.
Thank you so much. You did really well. I know that foreign names can be a trick, particularly, Asian foreign names like Tibetan. But yes, thank you so much for having me. I want to say, in response to your mentioning about the blessings of COVID bringing us together in different ways, I'm one of those people who in the past, I've been aware of the Gay Buddhist Fellowship, and because I've always lived in places that are far away from San Francisco, I've never had a chance to really participate. And so I'm really excited in more recent times that I've been able to join in. So thank you for allowing us to join in this way. Let's see. You also mentioned my name. My full name is Jetsun Zerdan Kelsang Phunrab. Like ordained people, it has a very beautiful meaning, and I can tell you a little bit about that. When I was just after I was ordained, one of the speeches that my teacher gave to us was that it feels really good right now that you're freshly ordained and the blessings are new and everything's just kind of going your way for a moment. But ultimately, things will not always go right. And whenever you're feeling down and out, you can remember your ordained name because they're very beautiful names. And so the Jetsun part of my name, the very first part of my name, means venerable. And the Zerdan part can be translated as radiant black selflessness. and Kelsang means fortunate, and Phunrab means supreme excellence. So that's a lot. I know it's a mouthful of a name, but I have actually used my own name as my own meditation, as its own meditation sometimes, just because of the beautiful meaning that's behind all of those kinds of different words. Anyway, so thank you for the introduction. And you've kind of gone over how I was ordained. So I guess I can tell you just a little bit about my personal life so that way you can kind of understand who I am. I was born in Connecticut in 1967, so that makes me 55. And there were some big family problems, and that ultimately pushed me out to moving to Oklahoma to be with another part of my family. That was in 1984. So the first 20 years-ish were in Connecticut, and then the second 20 years or so were in Oklahoma. I became a Buddhist in Oklahoma. Of all places, right? It's an unlikely place to become a Buddhist, and yet that's what happened. And then around 2005 to 2007, I began to become part of a particular Buddhist group and wound up getting ordained and moving to the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas in 2007. And now I've lived in Oregon since 2015. So what is that? I think 7 years or so. So that's a little bit of background about me. And I think sometimes it's curious to know people's kind of spiritual paths. So I thought I might mention that too. I was born into a Catholic family, so I was raised as a Catholic. And oftentimes when I was a child, I would remember telling people that I wanted to become a priest. So I guess it's not too far-fetched that I should become a Buddhist monk. But Catholicism was difficult for me in many different ways. I couldn't exactly put my finger on why. Maybe it felt a little bit rigid to me. I'm not exactly sure. Later in my early teens, my mother converted to Pentecostalism. So I spent my early teens actually really getting into Pentecostalism. I memorized books of the New Testament. I can still quote much of the book of John to this day because of that. But Pentecostalism is not very friendly to queer people, and I've always known that I was gay. Like, among my first thoughts that I can remember is that I'm gay and different, and so I've kind of known that all along. And when I was practicing in a Pentecostal church, there was so much antipathy towards gay people that it became a gigantic problem, and so I moved away from that. And in my late teens, kind of became a hardcore, militant, radical atheist. After that, I really still felt like I wanted a spiritual life. I've always considered myself to be a spiritual person. And so in order to find a sense of fulfillment around my spiritual life, I joined the Unitarian Church. And I remember when I joined the Unitarian Church, this was in Oklahoma City, the minister of that church was also an atheist. So that made me feel like right at home. I felt a little bit hesitant about joining a spiritual group being an atheist, but after meeting him, he said, hey, I'm an atheist too. So that's made things a lot easier for me. I still kind of wanted to learn. At that point in my life, I was into the career years of my life. I was, now in my 30s, and in many people's 30s, their career becomes a big part of their life. And my career was definitely not making me happy, although it was definitely making me a lot of money. And so I kind of felt that I wanted and needed to learn how to meditate. So I gravitated towards meditation groups and wound up practicing Zen for a little while. And then kept kind of going to different Buddhist meditation groups, and I met a Kadampa monk. And his life experience and temperament seemed to be radically different in my life experience and temperament. And I just kind of wanted to be like him, I guess is what it comes down to. And so I became a Kadampa Buddhist and was a lay practitioner for a few years, and then eventually became an ordained Kadampa Buddhist monk. So that's my life story. We now are about 15 minutes or so in, and I really would like to leave a whole bunch of time towards the end if I can, so we can have discussion, because I really feel like these kinds of teachings go a lot more deeply into our hearts if we can talk about them a little bit. So I'm going to try to get through these 6 perfections at a good clip and then leave some space at the end. So the 6 perfections. I'm taking the teachings that I'm sharing today from a couple books. One is called The Joyful Path of Good Fortune, and the other is called How to Solve Our Human Problems. I have them right here on standby. Joyful Path of Good Fortune and How to Solve Our Human Problems, both written by the man who ordained me. And I guess as a good Mahayanist Buddhist monk, I should start with the caveat that most of us give. Whatever I pass along and I get correct is because I've had good teachers, and whatever I pass along and it has some mistakes in it is because my understanding is less than perfect. So the practice of the 6 perfections are nearly strictly a Mahayana path. They're part of the Mahayana school of thought. They appear in the Theravada side in some of the later canons of the sutras, but they are definitely not emphasized. So in the Mahayana world, in Buddhism, there's Theravada and Mahayana. In the Theravadan path, they practice the Eightfold Path. And in the Mahayana world, we practice the 6 perfections. And so there's a little bit of a distinction there that I thought I would point out. So what are the 6 perfections? The 6 perfections are giving, patience, effort, moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom. Anyone can practice these practices. And they're virtuous practices, no matter who engages in these practices. But this is not what a perfection is. Like, there's a reason why we call them the perfection of giving, the perfection of patience, and so forth, the perfection of effort. Because what we do as Mahayanists is we mix the practice with an intention. So the intention is to become a bodhisattva. That's a Mahayana practice. A bodhisattva is a person, we can say, who's bound for enlightenment, but a bodhisattva is a person who wishes to attain enlightenment for the benefit of others. So they maintain this mind of wishing to attain enlightenment, but it's to benefit others. So when we practice these perfections, what we're doing is we're mixing the intention in our minds to bring benefit for others as we're making our way towards enlightenment, or at least reducing negativity. And so if we take like giving, for example, if we take giving and we think, I really want to become an enlightened being, I want to improve myself and become a better person and become more like a bodhisattva, a person on the way towards enlightenment. And I want to do this so I can bring great benefit to the world. And on that basis, then I will engage in giving. Well, that's a lot different than just giving. And so our intention changes everything. So I just wanted to explain how these practices become a perfection from a Buddhist point of view. So moving on to giving. I'm kind of just going to define each of these so that way we can understand a little bit more deeply what it is that we're talking about within a Buddhist context, because these can be kind of generic words, but I'm talking about them in context of Buddhism, particularly in the context of Mahayana Buddhism, and then furthermore within the context of the practice of a bodhisattva, a person who is wishing to attain enlightenment to benefit others. So we say that each of these perfections is a mind. And so the first thing to think about when we're thinking about perfections is that all of these perfections are a state of mind. So, for example, we'll get to giving. Giving, I'm just reading this off in my notes here so I don't lose my place, but giving is a mind that has decided to give with physical or verbal actions motivated by bodhicitta. So giving is a mind. It wishes to give either something physical or verbal with the motivation of helping others as we make our way along the spiritual path. There are different ways to give. There are many ways to give, but three particular ways to give that are mentioned in Tibetan Buddhist texts are to give material things, to give dharma, and to give fearlessness. And so giving material things seems pretty straightforward, but it becomes more nuanced if we think about when to give and when not to give. It's not just that we give without any mindfulness. We give people what they need in a way that they can accept it. Giving dharma, I like to think of giving dharma. There are many ways to share or give dharma, but I think that the more that we do it, I think the more that we do it without seeming like, that we're pretentious Buddhists or that we are attempting to convert people to Buddhism, is just to keep it really simple. Like, here's one way that I learned to give, particularly at first. I think everyone at some point in their life should drive around with an ordained Buddhist person in their car. Because one of the first ways that I learned to give was that you didn't really have to give away anything material at all, and yet it was a physical action. So I would drive around with a monk who I knew before I was even ordained, and we would go, for example, to a grocery store or a shopping center. And as I would pull into the parking lot, he would say, remember to leave some spaces for other people. So we would park like farther away. And as I was doing that, he was like, good, well now other people have a good place to park. So that's just a very simple way. I still do that to this day. Like when I go into a parking lot, I still find myself like parking not in the first space that's closest to the building. Like when I pass by the first space near a building, I think, that's good. Now someone else has a really good place to park. Because I know as a person who drives around myself that it's an impulse to want to get the best parking space. That's the closest and easiest. But if we have a mind wishing to benefit others, then it's a lot easier to give away that first parking space. So other ways to share Dharma. I'll find myself accidentally saying out loud just because I think these things internally an awful lot. Things like others first, me last. So that's a way of giving Dharma. It's kind of a condensation of Dharma. It's not like a quote from a scripture directly, but I think when other people hear us say things like others first, me last, I think it makes an impression on people. So it's a nice way to share Dharma. there are other like simple things to say. Oftentimes, because we all live. I live in a culture where monotheism is predominant. People often talk about a creator deity, and if they should ask my opinion, which is not often, but if they should ask my opinion, I will say things without embarrassment, like mind is the creator. So this is a very succinct way of sharing Dharma. Sometimes I'll even go on to say, mind is the creator. Other than mind, there is no creator. And so this you'll find in Tibetan Buddhist texts for sure. So it's a very succinct way of sharing Dharma. And then giving fearlessness is just really, there's lots of ways to give fearlessness. One way is to rescue little ants or insects and beings, or just to help someone who might be afraid, So, okay, I'm spending a lot of time on just giving. Patience is probably the one thing that I would like to, if there's one takeaway from today that I wish for you to have, is the practice of patience, because in our culture, I feel like there are so many around us, among us, even within my own mind, lacking patience. And it's a very beautiful, virtuous mind. So patience, once again, the definitions, patience is a mind. It's a mind that can bear any suffering or harm. So in Buddhism, we talk about patience being the opposite of hatred and anger. I think in the outside of the Buddhist world, we often think about love and hate being the pair of opposites, like love and hate are opposites. But within the context of the Mahayana traditions, we think of patience being the opposite of anger or hatred, whereas the opposite of love would be attachment. So it's a different point of view. But I like to remember these kinds of things because we need more patience in the world. If you've ever wanted to become a more patient person, if you've ever seen someone practicing patience and you think, I wish I were more patient, then the bitter pill to swallow when it comes to practicing patience is the acknowledgement and understanding of the fact that if you want to become a more patient person, then what you really need is for others to get in your way. And you need for other people to say things that you don't like. And you need circumstances to arise that would test your patience. It's like a really difficult practice. Because everything in us, there's a lot of experience and habit of just retaliating, wanting to not be patient. And so patience is the opposite of retaliating. Patience is voluntarily enduring the suffering. Voluntarily meaning that you've already made your mind up in advance that, when you see a long line at the grocery store, you don't go, oh. Because it's our natural inclination to want to do that. But if you see a long line in the grocery store, the chance just has arisen for you to practice patience. So it's like, it's your time. It can be your time to shine. So you can just voluntarily endure this. So you just get in that long line and then see how patient you are. And if you can endure it with a happy mind, then you're making progress. So anger being the opposite of a patient mind. Of the teaching, if you have only one takeaway from today's teaching, this portion of the patience teaching is the one thing I really wish for you to make part of your life, or deepen your understanding further into your heart about this teaching of patience versus anger. Because one thing that I really love about Buddhism is that we dive deeply into analyzing and comprehending, meditating on all the various minds and how it is that you get to these minds. Each of these minds is like a spiritual path. So here in my notes I have anger is a deluded mind. So patience is the virtuous mind, the mind that we wish to elevate. And anger is its opposite. It's a deluded mind that's dragging us down. So in order for you to go from either a patient or neutral mind into anger, several steps have to happen. So through kind of like Buddhist analysis, we can take it like step by step. You could break them down even further if you'd like, but these are like the 4 steps that happen. So you can think about these and see whether or not this is the way that your mind works too. The first step is that you focus on either an animate or inanimate object. So either like a person or a thing has now captivated your attention. That's the first step of getting on your way to anger, is that we think that we're not great meditators, but we are great meditators, because have you ever had something really anger you, that piss you off? Your mind becomes single pointed on that object, right? We're just really good at that. So that's the first step. The second step is to feel that that object is unattractive. All right. So now you're focusing your attention on something and you find that object to be unattractive. The next step, the third step, is that you begin to exaggerate all of the bad qualities of that object. You forget all about any good quality that object might have. So we do this with people an awful lot. You'll notice it when you get into arguments with people. Suddenly we start using the hyperboles, things like you always and you never. So we're completely avoiding any of the good qualities and focusing strictly on the bad qualities. Like saying to someone like, you are never are patient with me, or you are never kind, or you always do that. I mean, on its face, we can see that that's not true. But this is a mind leading its way towards anger. So the fourth step, the concluding step in this 4 steps, is that we wish to harm it. So we see an object, we focus in on it, we feel like it's unattractive, we exaggerate its unattractiveness, forgetting any good qualities, and then we wish to harm it. We may even want to destroy it. So in our daily interactions with people, this usually culminates in criticism and disparagement. Like the examples I was giving of saying to people, you always, or you never, or I can't believe it when. So the opposite of that mind is patience. So if you find yourself, it's good to know that those steps happen, because if you find yourself engaging in any of those 4 steps, there's a little part of your mind that you go, uh-oh, I'm on my way to anger. And if you can force a wedge in your mind when that's beginning to happen, like I can see this beginning to happen, so just drop it. Change the object of your mind, change the subject. It's got to go. It leads to no good results. It's the opposite of patience. Like if you've ever wanted to become a patient person and you see that your mind is going in that trap, then stop, because that is not helping you become a better patient person. Okay, so I'm going to try to get through the other perfections pretty quickly. Effort. Effort is a mind that delights in virtue. So oftentimes when I teach about effort, I try to say that effort is not like a mind like you're forcing. This is using a lot of effort. It's not like that within the Mahayana Buddhist context. Effort is a mind that's kind of like a child at play. I think that we often use that example. Like, when a child is engrossed in their play, they're playing with their toys, we're playing with each other, it takes a lot to tear them away from that. And they don't want to tear away from their play. So, effort is a joyful experience. It's like making your spiritual life, your spiritual path, your Dharma practice into something that is enjoyable, like your favorite hobby that happens to also make you a better person. So I just wanted to emphasize the point that if you feel like you're pushing in your Dharma practice, or you're pushing in your spiritual life, it's a mistake. A reevaluation would be good at that point. Moral discipline. Moral discipline is a mind. It's a mind that's determined to abandon faults. So those faults are physical and verbal. And we act on the basis of that determination. So there are different kinds of moral disciplines, like the moral discipline of restraint, for example, withholding from doing something that we know is either harmful for ourselves or others. The moral discipline of gathering virtuous dharmas, like contemplating, listening to, meditating upon, acting upon dharma. So that's an action of moral discipline. And then the big one is the moral discipline of benefiting other living beings. So when we bring benefit to other living beings, then that is moral discipline. Okay, concentration. Concentration, once again, is a mind. It's a mind whose nature is to be single-pointedly placed on a virtuous object, and whose function is to prevent distraction. Oftentimes, within Tibetan Mahayana Buddhist traditions, I can say for sure, probably for most, we use the word concentration and meditation interchangeably. It's pretty much the same word. So concentration and meditation, the perfection of meditation or concentration is a mind. It focuses on something single-pointedly, but the object of that concentration is necessarily a virtuous object. So, in keeping with that joyful effort, not being like a stressful chore, meditation is kind of like this too. The concentration is like this too. When I talk about meditation and concentration, I often try to encourage people to think of it like, not like the concentration where once again you're pushing or forcing yourself to do just one monotasking thing. It's more like, how when you have a glass of water and you add salt to it, you can add salt a little bit at a time. At some point, that glass of water is going to become salt water. So this is another understanding of concentration. Like we understand that, like the concentration of something in a fluid. So meditation and concentration is like this too. You just keep improving upon. So it's like adding salt into water. Right? Perhaps our practice of meditation or concentration right now is quite weak. Perhaps it has been weak and then strong. Now it's weak again. This is because our mind constantly changes. So it's not a problem. You just begin to concentrate by adding more attention and mindfulness into the concentration. And then you can have a perfection of concentration, particularly if you're wishing to become a more concentrated person for the benefit of others, right? Once again, that makes it a perfection. Okay, lastly, wisdom. This is the big one. So, from a Kadampa point of view, from a Mahayana point of view, all of the things that we do in Buddhism, all of the other practices that we engage in lead up, they are meant to lead us to the point of becoming a more wise person. And not just in general, within the context of Buddhism, it is to understand the ultimate nature of reality. I mean, that is like definitively Buddhist. It is understanding the ultimate nature of reality is the end game, if you will, of Buddhism. So like all the practices of, being a compassionate person, being a person who gives and engaging in all of the virtue, meditating. Sometimes it seems like hours and days on end. Those are great practices. They are meant to like settle your mind down. So that way, when your mind finally becomes more settled, you can engage in the practice of perfection. So what is the practice of perfection of wisdom? Wisdom is a mind that functions mainly to dispel doubt and confusion by understanding the object thoroughly. So in general, we can say wisdom can be divided into two parts: the wisdom of understanding or wisdom of realizing conventional truth. That is the truth that we're living right now. I am me, and I'm here in Oregon, and you are you, and you are elsewhere, and we're all connected up by the things that appear to our minds, our environments, our bodies, other objects, our food. So we all kind of agree that these are things that are the real world. In the Mahayana framework, we don't think of the real world. We think of conventions. Like, I'm calling my body me because we can agree as a convention that functions, and it does function. Okay, so there's that wisdom of realizing the conventional world, and then there's the wisdom of realizing the ultimate nature of reality or ultimate truth. I'll tell you, one day I would love to give a teaching just on this, just because it is so important to me as a Buddhist monk, as a person who loves to practice Buddhism, and because I really wish that more Buddhists would put some joyful effort into trying to understand the ultimate nature of reality. I would love to teach just on this subject someday. So maybe someday in the future we can work on that. But one way to say it briefly is that everything in reality comes from the side of the mind. There's so many different ways I can phrase this. There is nothing that exists outside of your mind. Now, you could immediately feel your mind want to object to that. Like, there are real things outside of my mind there, Zerdan. There really is a job that I have to go to. I really do have to feed my body if I want to survive. It takes a lot of patience. I mean, it took me years and years and years to even get close to understanding what this could possibly mean in a semi-correct way. So it takes a long time, but with a lot of patience, with an open mind that's happy, after engaging in other practices that, begin to calm your mind down, I encourage you in the future to think more about the wish to understand the meaning of the word emptiness as it's used in Buddhism. So it's just another way of saying things. That all phenomena, or everything that exists in reality lacks inherent existence. It's a way of saying that it doesn't exist without all of the other things. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything interacts with everything else. And all of those things that are interacting happen within the mind and nowhere else. Okay. So, giving, patience, effort, moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom. These are 6 practices motivated by the wish to become an enlightened being so that way we can benefit others. These are the 6 perfections. Okay, I think we have some more minutes now left open for questions and discussions if we'd like.
Thank you for a wonderful talk, Zerdan. It was so full of wisdom for me, and the idea that the opposite of love being attachment is kind of blew my mind. So I'm going to be meditating on that for a while. But a question that I had is, I had always been under the impression that a bodhisattva was somebody who had already attained almost to the stage of enlightenment and chose not to take that step, but to stay in service to others. But the way you're defining it kind of suggests that we're all bodhisattvas just by the intention to strive towards enlightenment. So is there anything that you could?
Oh, absolutely. So from the Theravada side, they refer to people as arhats, people who are kind of renounced and have become kind of a more special holy being. Within the context of the Mahayana, you are right in that oftentimes we will say people have taken rebirth intentionally as a human again, as a bodhisattva, because they had attained their bodhisattva nature in a previous life, and so now they are foregoing final attainment for many lives, perhaps indefinitely, until everyone attains enlightenment together. Like it is the whole concept of Mahayana that, Mahayana, the Maha part of that means great, meaning all of the living beings, and Yana being like the vehicle. So the Mahayana means that we all attain enlightenment together. It can mean that that no one is left out. But there is an aspect of that, if we all are going to attain enlightenment together, it comes from the side of the mind. So there's got to be a part of your mind, particularly as a bodhisattva, that it's already kind of accomplished. Like you have to have imagination enough to imagine yourself having attained the final nirvana, the final parinirvana, the final goal of enlightenment. And then upon arising from that meditation, you can imagine, so has everyone else. Everyone, we all just did this together. So it'll change your life experience. It's not that your mind will still, most of your mind, particularly after the meditation's well over, the next day, the next week, within an hour. You might forget that and you might not believe it anymore, but the Mahayana is a suggestion that enlightenment is attained altogether based upon your own experience. So in this very life, you can go to Mahayana temples, gathering places, centers, in front of a Mahayana teacher who's given permission to give vows. You can take bodhisattva vows. At that moment of taking those vows, you are a bodhisattva. I mean, that's the way that we teach it in the Tibetan traditions. You don't have to wait to like become, a person who hardly ever gets angry or, is completely free from delusion. I think that from an imperfect point of view, bodhisattvas are people who are bound for enlightenment. They've taken the vows and they're trying. It's an imperfect world. It's samsara. Great question. Who else? Bob, I think Bob has his hand up. Bob, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to hear you. Your words today very much affected me. I would like to hear them every hour on the hour for the next 112 hours. But the other thing that affected me was your telling of the story of your life. A life is a continuity, but our lives have discontinuous points where we change directions. And you had several in your life that you've mentioned. I don't know if you're comfortable describing any in particular, which was perhaps even surprising to you that that change of direction happened and what the circumstances were that allowed that to happen.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Bob. Well, although I kind of did have a small wish in my childhood to become a priest because I was a Roman Catholic person. I probably made my family crazy because I was a more strict Catholic than the rest of them. And then, so it still kind of took me by surprise to become a Buddhist monk, mostly because, in my roaring 20s, when I first started reading about Buddhism, some of the first things I read about were, renunciation. Like you want to give up things. Like it definitely felt like I didn't want to give up anything. Like if anything, I needed more of something to make myself happy. So becoming a renunciate was kind of a surpriser. I didn't see myself doing that. But when we learned a little bit more about it, the object that we're renouncing is suffering. So when you look at it from that point of view, having a mind that really wishes to not suffer anymore is the basis for Buddhist renunciation. So I don't know, when I first read about Buddhism and I learned about Buddhist people, they all, they were vegetarians, they didn't smoke, they didn't drink, they didn't swear. I was like, well, all of that sounds like no fun to me. And I definitely did not want to become a Buddhist. I started my Buddhist practices thinking, I'm just going to learn some meditation and chill out. And I'm not going to become a Buddhist because that sounds really not fun. And yet, the more I did it, the more I experienced it, the more peaceful feeling I was having, then it made a lot more sense to me. So that was kind of a shocker. Didn't see that one coming exactly. That kind of sneaked up on me. I alluded to several problems throughout my life. Like, I mentioned that really I could remember thinking that I was gay and different, probably like around 5 years old. Like among my very first thoughts were, I'm different and this is a gigantic problem. In addition to that, I come from a deeply troubled family. On my father's side, there is psychopathy that is criminal. And on my mother's side, there's a sociopathy that is really bad. There's severe mental illness on both sides of my family. So many of these life changes for me were precipitated as I was being pushed by the circumstances of my life. So being a gay person, I knew I was like an outsider already. Having big mental problems on both sides of my family really kind of forced me, like I didn't want to become a mentally ill person. And so I needed to work on self-improvement and avoiding mental illness, avoiding deluded ways of thinking, avoiding lying to myself.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
Who else? What else? You have at least like maybe 6 or 7 minutes or something like that. Oh, I should probably say, as you may have noticed throughout my talk, like, I'm the kind of person who rarely has anything to say. Like, I constantly hear from my friends and that I'm too quiet, that I have nothing to say. But when I talk about Buddhism, it's hard to get me to shut up, right? Because it's like my favorite thing. And so sometimes you may have noticed I've gone for the handkerchief a few times and wiping my face. It is so close to my heart, and like sharing my favorite thing that's the closest and most deeply held thing in my heart. I do kind of get a little teary-eyed, so I guess kind of sorry for that. And at the same time, that's just kind of like who I am. I've accepted that that's who I am. That's how I work.
Hey, Zerdan, this is Tom.
Hey, Tom.
I want to thank you for such an introspective talk. I realize that the 6 perfections are more outward focused than perhaps the Eightfold Path can be. I really like that idea of patience being the opposite of hatred and anger, rather than love or something like that. But the one thing that really struck me too was the idea of giving. And so sometimes I'll be on a walk, a morning walk, and I'll see like something that somebody has thrown away, litter or whatever, not just scraps of paper, but something that's like, oh my God, why does somebody have to throw that there? And so this sort of anger arises in me, or, judgment about the state of humanity today. And so I'll pick it up, but I'm able to transform it from being, sort of angry about it by thinking, I don't want the next person that walks along to have that same impulse, to have that same negative thought. That's why I'm going to pick it up and throw it away. Not because I'm intent on cleaning up the world or something like that. I just want to prevent someone else from feeling that negative emotion. And I've had a hard time explaining that to some of my friends who, one in particular who's also a Buddhist will say, oh, you're just hung up on good and bad. Why is a piece of, styrofoam bad? And, but now this gives me a framework for understanding my impulse to do that. So thank you.
I think that is a perfect practical example. Like, so you are giving beautiful environments to others. The karma for that is amazing. For example, furthering that on, like, as a Mahayana thought, as the thought from the mind of a bodhisattva, if we see other people as beings who are making their own way on their spiritual path towards enlightenment, and we regard these people, however they appear to our mind, like people appear to us as, harsh human beings filled with delusion, but if we let go of that appearance, if we are bodhisattva, perhaps we've taken bodhisattva vows, we're practicing seeing other beings as making their way towards enlightenment. We begin to see them even as holy beings. So, like, creating a beautiful environment for holy beings, that's a beautiful gift. So
yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I think I like keeping Buddhism from becoming a theory, and to maintain keeping it as just daily activities, real world practices. So I think that's perfect. What else?
It's a beautiful thought to conclude with. So thank you again, Zerdan, for such a beautiful talk.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Do we have any announcements? I bet we have a host today.
Yes, I'm your host today, and so please stay and enjoy the company of the Sangha. There are refreshments and hot water and tea. And if you use a cup, either put it in the sink or dishwasher, and I'll take care of it. I'll be going around with the donor bowl to accept contributions to cover our expenses. Your generosity is appreciated. Donations in the range of $10 to $20 help the Sangha meet its expenses. These include honorarium for our Dharma speakers, rent for this beautiful center, monthly dinners that hopefully will start again at Market Street East services, our quarterly newsletter mailed mostly to people in prison. There's a newcomer's sign-up sheet on the credenza if you wish to be included and receive our Sangha membership directory. Please sign up and include contact information you wish to share with the group. Some members go out for lunch after the meeting. Everyone is welcome to join them. The group meets at the front door around 12:30.
Thank you. I would say one need that we have, an opportunity for service to the Sangha, is we could use one or two Zoom people to handle the Zoom streaming of our sits on Sunday mornings. Two of the Zoom techs who serve now will be gone from the beginning of February for 6 weeks. So it's an absolute need in order to keep the streaming going here. So you could contact me. I'm in the directory, and take it from there. If you care to donate, among the people online, you can go to gaybuddhist.org, and there are links there to allow you to donate. Any other? Next week is Christmas Day, and we'll have small group discussion that day. Okay. Zerdan, would you care to offer the dedication of merit?
I think that you have a pre-written one, don't you?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I'd be happy to just listen along with everyone.
Okay, thank you. So we'll gather and...
It's the four immeasurables.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Cass.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Zerdan. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zerdan.
Thank you,
Zerdan.
Happy Festus.
Os Festus.
Merry Christmas. For those of us who practice Sir Isaac Newton's birthday, happy Gravmas.
Oh, wow.
Because
is that today?
No, on Christmas Day. Sir Isaac Newton was born on Christmas Day, and so to celebrate gravity, people get together and have Gravmas parties. It's true. All right.
I love that.
Science is real.
Right. I love those science-related celebrations like Pi Day and things like that.
There's Pi Day and Tau Day. All right. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.